They told me the hotel didn't have a 13th floor, but my room key said 1309, and the elevator let me in. It happened last December during a business trip to Chicago. My company booked me at an old hotel downtown, 5 stars online. Nothing fancy, just clean and close to the office. I arrived late around 11 p.m., and the snow outside made everything feel colder than it should. The woman at the front desk seemed distracted. She kept glancing over her shoulder, as if she were waiting for something or someone. Still, she handed me my key and smiled stiffly. "Room 1309, she said. "Elevators are just down the hall." I paused. 1309, I asked. I thought hotels didn't have a 13th floor. She didn't answer, just kept smiling, like she hadn't heard me or didn't want to. I figured this place just didn't follow the superstition. Until I stepped into the elevator, the buttons went from 12 straight to 14. Number 13. I looked down at the key card again. It definitely said 1309. I looked back at the buttons. Between 12 and 14, I noticed a thin seam, like something had been covered up. You wouldn't see it unless you were really looking. I pressed it. There was a soft click. The elevator jolted slightly, then began to rise. But the screen showing the floor numbers turned off. No 13, number 14, just a blank display. The air felt heavier, and my ears popped. It was like the pressure changed. Then the doors opened. What I stepped into didn't look like the rest of the hotel. The hallway was dim, with only a few flickering bulbs overhead. The carpet was stained and frayed, and the walls were yellowed with age. I smelled something like mold and rust. "Hello," I called out. No answer. Holding my suitcase, I walked down the hallway. The door numbers were carved in old wood, with brass knobs instead of electronic locks. Sure enough, 1309 was near the end. My keycard still worked. The lock clicked, and I stepped inside. It was freezing. My breath showed in the air. I flipped the switch, and a lamp by the bed turned on, casting a dull yellow light. The room looked untouched for decades. The bed was made, but the sheets were thin and stained. There was no TV, no mini fridge, no room service menu. A painting hung above the beetle forest under a full moon. The trees were bare, and if you stared long enough, it felt like the shadows were moving. I tried to turn on the heater, but the dial spun loosely. Broken, I was too tired to care. I laid on the bed without pulling back the covers, fully dressed, just to rest for a few hours. That was my mistake. At 2:17 a.m. I woke up. There was a sound, a click, like a doorknob turning, then footsteps, slow and steady, just outside my door. They stopped. I sat up, heart racing. The doorknob turned again. I had locked it, but I remembered the chain. I had slid it into place. The door creaked open an inch, then stopped with a metallic clink at the chain. I didn't move. Through the gap, I saw only darkness, but I could feel that something was there, watching me. Then I heard breathing, deep, uneven, wet. Then a voice, whispering, "You're not supposed to be here." The door shut. Click. Silence. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. I stayed sitting up, staring at the door, afraid that if I moved, it would come back. The light stayed on until dawn. When the sun rose, I grabbed my suitcase and ran. The hallway was empty, but the elevator was gone. In its place was a door. I opened it and found a stairwell, cold concrete, no lights, dust everywhere. I ran down 12 flights without stopping. At the front desk, the same woman looked surprised to see me. I stayed in 1309. I said, "What floor is that? What happened last night?" She stared at me for a moment, then said calmly, "There is no room 1309, sir." I held up the keycard. Her eyes narrowed. She took it from me and slipped it into a drawer beneath the counter, closing it carefully. "It won't happen again," she said softly. I checked out immediately and booked a new hotel across town. But sometimes I still dream about that hallway, that door, room 1309. And in my dream, the door is open, and there's someone waiting inside. There was a knock at my hotel door just after midnight. The man outside said he was from room service. I hadn't ordered anything, but when I opened the door, the tray was already inside. It was my third night alone at a downtown Seattle hotel. I was there on business, staying in one of those high-rise places that looked modern but felt cold and empty the moment you walked in. The staff barely spoke, the hallways echoed, and the silence in the rooms pressed in from all sides. I was too tired to care. After a long day of meetings, I grabbed a quick dinner, took a shower, and crawled into bed. The city lights blinked through the half-open curtains. I didn't even turn off the lamp. I just wanted to rest. Then came the knock. 3 short taps. Not loud, but firm. I sat up, disoriented. Then came a voice, a man's voice. Calm and steady. "Room service." I blinked and looked at the bedside clock. 12:04 a.m. I hadn't ordered anything. The room phone was unplugged. I had done that myself earlier because it kept ringing with promotional calls. I slipped out of bed, walked quietly to the door, and checked through the peephole. The hallway was empty. No one was there. But I heard it again, closer this time. "Room service, ma'am." I opened the door slowly, just a crack. That's when I noticed it. A metal tray had been slid inside, resting just beyond the threshold. I hadn't seen or heard anyone place it there. Steam still rose from the plate beneath a silver cover. The smell was thick and unfamiliar, something meaty, but not quite right, like stew laced with burnt sugar and metal. I stepped back, shut the door, and double-locked it. My skin was prickly. My hands were cold. I hadn't called for room service. The phone was unplugged, and someone had placed that tray inside my room before I opened the door. I stared at it for a long time before I finally lifted the lid. Inside was a bowl of dark stew, with chunks of meat floating in a thick, oily broth. The smell hit me harder now. There was something sharp beneath it, like iron or blood. I turned away, stomach churning. I called the front desk using my cell phone. "Hi! Someone just delivered room service to me, but I didn't order anything," I said. There was a long pause. "Ma'am, our kitchen closes at 10, the voice replied. "We don't deliver after that." I hung up. The stew sat there cooling. I didn't touch it. I didn't sleep. I lay in bed with the lights on, eyes wide, listening. At 2:41 a.m. I heard it again, the knock. 3 short taps, the same voice. Room service. But this time it wasn't coming from the hallway. It was coming from inside the room. I bolted upright. My heart hammered in my chest. I scanned the room, every shadow now looking alive. The closet door was open just an inch. I had closed it before bed, I know I did. I got up slowly and walked toward it. Every step felt heavier than the last. I grabbed the handle and flung it open. Nothing, just coats, hangers, a spare pillow. Then I turned around and saw the tray. It was gone. I hadn't moved at the bowl, the lid, the napkin, all of it gone. I stood frozen in the middle of the room. The silence was loud, like the walls themselves were breathing. I backed away toward the door, and that's when I saw it. Something had been written in the condensation on the bathroom mirror. I swear I hadn't, but my mouth suddenly tasted like salt and rust. I ran to the sink and rinsed my mouth, my hands shaking uncontrollably. I opened the minibar, hoping for water or anything to drown out the taste. Inside was the metal tray, perfectly clean, no stew, no bowl, just a folded note. I opened it with trembling fingers. "Thanks for the call. We'll be back tomorrow." I left that hotel within 10 minutes. I didn't pack. I didn't look back. I just grabbed my keys, my phone, and got out. But the story didn't end there. 2 days later, back home, I checked my voicemail. There was a single message waiting. It was myvoice.com/softpleasant. "I'd like to order room service, please." Same as last night. I kept hearing a child crying through the wall. At first I thought it was just the hotel noises playing tricks on me until I found out there was no room next to mine. I checked into the hotel late on a rainy Thursday night. It was one of those generic business hotels, nothing special, just a place to sleep before my early meeting. The lobby was quiet, dimly lit with a faint smell of cleaning supplies. The clerk handed me the key to room 512 on the 5th floor and warned me the elevator was slow but reliable. The moment I stepped into the hallway, I noticed something odd. The carpet had been replaced recently and smelled faintly of new glue, but the walls felt cold and worn, like they hadn't been painted in years. The faint hum of the air conditioner was constant, but I could also hear other noises, soft, almost imperceptible at first. I unlocked room 512 and stepped inside. The room was small but tidy, with a stiff bedspread and a window overlooking the city. I dropped my bags, turned on the TV, and tried to shake off the exhaustion from my trip. That's when I heard the soft sound of crying. Faint at first, like a whisper in the wind, then more distinct. A child's sobbing, muffled but unmistakable, coming from the wall beside me. I froze. My heart jumped. It sounded so close, like it was right next door. I pressed my ear to the wall and listened. The sobs were uneven, desperate, like a small child crying in the dark. But I thought, there is no way a kid could be staying in this kind of hotel, especially so late. Probably someone on a phone call or maybe a TV playing next door. I tried to distract myself, telling myself it was nothing, but the crying continued, growing louder in the quiet moments when the air conditioner clicked off. I turned off the TV and sat in the dark, listening. I could almost make out a whispered plea. "Mommy." The next morning, bleary-eyed and unsettled, I called down to the front desk. "Hi, I keep hearing crying from the room next to mine," I said. "Is there a family staying nearby?" The clerk's face tightened. He hesitated, then said quietly, "Actually, room 514 has been sealed off for years. No one stays there." I blinked. "Sealed off, but it's right next to me." "Yes," he replied, voice low. "That room was closed after a tragedy. We keep it shut for maintenance, but it's definitely empty." My skin crawled. I asked if I could switch rooms, but the hotel was fully booked. There was nothing available. That night, I lay awake listening. The crying returned louder and more desperate. I swear I heard footsteps pacing just beyond the wall, slow and heavy. The air felt colder on that side of the bed, like a shadow was pressing against it. I got up and pressed my hand against the wall. The plaster was cold and rough beneath my palm. Then, I heard a soft giggle. I pulled back, trembling. Suddenly a faint tapping started, like tiny fingers drumming on the other side. I grabbed my phone and used the flashlight to examine the wall. There were no cracks, no openings, nothing to explain the sounds. The next morning I went down to the lobby again. "I don't think I can stay here," I said. "Something's wrong with that room next to mine." The clerk nodded slowly, his eyes filled with something I couldn't read. "You're not the first to hear it," he said. "Some guests have reported noises, whispers, crying, but no one has ever stayed in room 514 since it closed." I asked what had happened there. He looked away and said, "Only a long time ago, a family lived here. The little girl died in that room under tragic circumstances. The hotel decided to close it off afterward. I left the hotel that day, unable to shake the feeling of cold fingers brushing past me in the dark. But sometimes, when I'm alone in my own apartment, I still hear the faintest sobbing from the walls."